So today's topic is about the Caliphate of Uthman radhiyallahu anhu. And Uthman radhiyallahu anhu's caliphate is important in a way because two or three different type of questions are asked from this topic. दो तीन तरह के questions हमारे पास इस topic में से आते हैं. They may ask you to write about his election and the compilation of Quran. It is very simple. Okay, that you will just start your answer with the election of Uthman and how the Quran has been compiled during his rule, during his Khilafat, and what has been done during for what services he did for the compilation of Quran. Okay, they even ask you to write about his administration. Okay, write about the administration of Usman radhiyallahu anhu. Administration under Usman radhiyallahu anhu could also be asked. Or they may ask you to write about that what difficulties and what charges Usman radhiyallahu anhu faced in the later years of his Khilafat, and you may be asked to write about the revolt which started during the last years of his Khilafat, which resulted in his martyrdom. So one of the most important questions from this topic is the charges leveled against Usman anhu, which resulted in his martyrdom. So first of all, we will discuss how you will write the answer for this question. Okay, that what were the reasons. First of all, when such type of question is asked, write about the charges leveled against Usman anhu, that what were the charges against Usman. Okay, and write about the revolt against Usman anhu. So what you have to first mention that Usman anhu ruled for about 12 years. Okay, his rule is for 12 years, and during this rule the first 6 to 8 years were glorious, they were remarkable, they were full of success. Islamic empire expanded. They were glorious in a way that it reminded the people about the golden time of Hazrat Umar's Khilafat. So the first 6 to 8 years were glorious, but last 4 to 6 years were full of problems. They were full of revolt. He faced several problems during that time. So here, what you have to mention that what were the reasons of these revolt. First of all, identify the reasons and the causes of these revolt. that कि उसकी वजूहात क्या थी, उसकी reasons क्या थी, कि why Usman रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु faced opposition, why he faced these charges. Then later on you will discuss कि what charges he faced afterwards. पहले तो causes को identify करें कि reasons क्या थे. ठीक है, तो the first and the main reason that you can identify in your answer that he was very much kind, and because of his soft nature and his leniency, that he was very much lenient, and due to his leniency people, they leveled different charges against him. So one of the major cause was his gentle personality, his kindness, his leniency. That Usman was very much kind and lenient. Fine. So the first thing that you have to identify is his leniency, kindness. The second reason for the revolt against him, it was a Jew from Yemen. Okay, the Jew, his name was Abdullah bin Sabah. Okay, you will talk about Abdullah bin Sabah, who was a Jew from Yemen, and he was the one who took the lead, and he started a movement which was called Sabai movement. Okay, they were called Sabaites. Okay, this movement which was led by him, it was called Sabai movement. He since he was a Jew and he outwardly had accepted Islam, but deep from inside he was against the success of the Muslims. He was very much jealous because Jews were very much hostile towards the Muslims because of their success. Since Jews have been exiled from Medina first, after they broke their agreement with the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they went to Khyber, and later on Khyber was also conquered. After the conquest of Khyber, they were also exiled from Khyber too. They went to Syria, and in the Caliphate of Umar radhiyallahu anhu, Syria was also conquered, and now they were living as a minority, and they were paying jizya tax to the Muslims. So they were not happy with the growing power of the Muslims, and now they had realized that that they are unable to defeat the Muslims by fighting with them. So what they did, they started a conspiracy. They started a movement, a secret movement against the Muslim. एक खुफिया साजिश उन्होंने मुसलमानों के खिलाफ स्टार्ट की. And according to that uh, secret movement, they started the rivalry between Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim. Okay, what they did? These Jews, particularly the followers of Abdullah bin Sabah, who took the lead, what they started a rivalry between Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim. Okay, these were the two tribes. Okay, Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim. So Banu Hashim were the Prophet's family, and the other tribe, the rival tribe, was Banu Umayyah. These were the two main tribes living in Makkah even before the arrival of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Although there was a rivalry between these two tribes before the advent of Islam, but due to the presence of the Holy Prophet, due to Islam, it was not that much during that time. But with the passage of time, after the death of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, so this has been instigated by Abdullah bin Sabah. Abdullah bin Sabah came to Medina and he started instigating people. He showed that he is that he is a very devout Muslim, or very devoted to Islam, and he showed his love and affection with the Prophet Muhammad's family, Banu Hashim, that he loves Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, and his family, Ahle Bayt, too much. And behind this love and devotion, he had his secret plan that he wanted to create such a rivalry and instigate this rivalry between Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim. तो बज़ाहिर तो उसने अपने आप को ये दावा किया, ये क्लेम किया कि he loves Banu Hashim and he has such a deep love and affection for the Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him's family. अहले बैत के साथ बहुत मोहब्बत है. लेकिन इसके पीछे, behind this, he had the intention that he wanted to create the rivalry between these two tribes, ताकि वो बनु हाशिम को बनु मैया के खिलाफ करे और इन दोनों ट्राइब्स को आपस में लड़वाए. This was the actual purpose in which he was successful. So kindness and leniency of Usman and the rivalry between Banu Umayyah and Banu Hashim. And the third reason, you can add this as a third reason, because this rivalry has been instigated between these two tribes by Abdullah bin Sabah. So this is actually a third reason that we can say that this was instigated by Abdullah bin Sabah. So you can particularly talk about Jews, and in Jews particularly write about Abdullah bin Sabah, the one who has started a movement against Muslims which was called Sabai movement, and through this movement he outwardly had accepted Islam. Okay, he was a hypocrite, and अब ठीक है मुनाफिक था, अपने आप को बज़ाहिर मुसलमान शो किया और अपने आप को ये शो किया कि वो बनु हाशिम से और अहले बैत से बहुत मोहब्बत करते हैं, और इसके थ्रू उसने क्या किया, ही स्टार्टेड अ राइवलरी, दोनों को आपस में, मुसलमानों के जो टू मेन ट्राइब्स थे, ठीक है, उनके आपस में फसाद और उनके दुश्मनी जो है उसको इंस्टिगेट किया, उसको बढ़ाया, एंड they came across one another and they started fighting. So he was the one who has actually initiated the civil war amongst the Muslims. Fine. So another reason हम भी उसको कह सकते हैं कि चौथा, fourth reason, as a reason हम ये count कर सकते हैं कि Usman had initially faced problem in Kufa. Some sources mention that Usman faced some problem in Kufa. Okay, and Usman Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu shifted these people from Kufa to other provinces. ठीक है, उन्होंने he did not take any strict action against them. Yes, he wanted to break the Muslim unity. So we can say that he wanted to break the Muslim unity and he wanted to create the rivalry, दुश्मनी उनके आपस में. ठीक है, तो Usman initially started facing problem in Kufa from some people, those who started instigating people against the Usman Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu and his policies. Whatever policies has been introduced by Usman, so they were criticized by the people and they raised their voice against Usman Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu. So Usman Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu dealt these people with leniency, since he was a very lenient person. What he did, instead of taking a firm action against them, इनके खिलाफ कोई बहुत ज़बरदस्त किस्म का एक्शन लेते हैं, उनको पनिश करते हैं, what he did, उन्होंने ये किया कि he shifted them from Kufa to other provinces. Okay, he thought that this will solve the problem. So he shifted them to the other provinces like Egypt, Okay, he shifted them to, some of them were shifted to Egypt, and some others they were shifted to Basra and in other parts of the Islamic Empire in other areas. So Usman radiallahu anhu thought that it will solve the problem, it will break their unity, and they will not be able to propagate their ideas in other areas. So these people were shifted to the other places, other provinces. But instead, ठीक है, इससे ये प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व होने के बजाय क्या हुआ, it got further worse. Why? Because the circle of their activity got further wide. Actually, there was a problem in Kufa only, but when these people were shifted to the other provinces, their circle was further widened. It became further wide. Okay, broad. ठीक है, ये इनकी एक्टिविटीज का सर्कल जो था वो और फैल गया. एंड उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु started facing problem from Egypt and Basra also. The problem which Usman was facing in Kufa, he started facing the same problems from Egypt and Basra too. So these are the basic reasons that Usman radiallahu faced, why he faced charges against him. Okay, his leniency, his kindness, his soft nature, and since he did not handle the problem initially with firmness, and that is why it their roots and their feet became firm in the ground, and it became later on difficult for Usman to take proper action against these people. Later on, you have to write the charges which Usman radiallahu faced afterwards. What charges? मतलब क्या इल्जामात, क्या allegations उनके ऊपर लगाए गए. Okay, so you have to write about the charges which Usman radiallahu anhu faced, how he has been accused. ठीक है, कैसे उनको जो है वो उनके ऊपर इल्जामात जो जो लगाए गए उनको आइडेंटिफाई करना है. Okay, what are these major charges? One of the main charge against Usman radiallahu anhu was of nepotism. Usman radiallahu anhu was charged with nepotism. Nepotism कहते हैं, yes, Abdullah bin Sabah had his supporters in Kufa also. ठीक है, तो Usman radiallahu anhu was charged with nepotism. Nepotism is favoritism, giving favor to your close relatives, appointment of the close relatives on the key post. So first and the most important charge against Usman रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु was कि उन्होंने अपने close relatives को, अपने, ठीक है, अपने family members को, he had appointed his family members, those who were inefficient, on the key posts. Okay, particularly as governors. ठीक है, उन्होंने अपने रिश्तेदारों को, अपने जानने वालों को, अपने ट्राइब के लोगों को क्या किया है, की पोस्ट के ऊपर अपॉइंट किया हुआ है. ठीक है, गवर्नर्स अपॉइंट किया हुआ है. ठीक है, फेवरेटिज्म करते हैं, एंड दोज रिलेटिव्स आर इनएफिशिएंट फॉर दैट पोस्ट. वन ऑफ द चार्ज अगेंस्ट उस्मान वाज ऑफ नेपोटिज्म. वी विल डिस्कस दीज चार्जेस इन डिटेल. ओके, अभी हम डिस्कस करते हैं नेपोटिज्म. द फर्स्ट चार्ज अगेंस्ट हिम वाज नेपोटिज्म. द सेकंड चार्ज अगेंस्ट, ठीक है, उनके अगेंस्ट जो दूसरा इल्ज़ाम था वो ये था कि ही वॉज अक्यूज एंड ही वॉज चार्ज दैट ही हैड अ weak control over his governors. Okay, he had a weak control over governors. Governors were free and they were taking decisions by their own without consulting the caliph. So the second allegation against Usman was that he had a weak control. Governors were free and they were doing whatever they want to do. This was the second allegation, that Usman was very much lenient and he cannot exercise full authority and control over his governors. The third allegation against Usman was that he had spent lavishly from Baitul Mal. That is, he spent lavishly from Baitul Mal, particularly on his relatives. Okay, this was the third allegation against Usman radiallahu anhu. So the third one is that he had spent lavishly from Baitul Mal. Okay, mention it in your answer, particularly on his relatives. The fourth particular allegation against Usman was the burning of the Holy Quran. Okay, these are the main and the major charges against him. Burning of Holy Quran. That Usman had burned authentic volumes of the Holy Quran too. So Usman faced these four types of charges. Here we not only have to just identify the charge which has been leveled against Usman anhu, but we have to describe that to what extent these charges were true. Okay, so we have to describe. So first of all, we had described the reasons. Okay, the reasons. Okay, amongst the reason what we had mentioned कि reasons क्या थे हज़रत उस्मान रज़ी अल्लाह अन्हु के खिलाफ जो इल्ज़ामात थे, हमने देखा कि उनकी kindness and leniency. We can even mention that the vastness of the Islamic empire. Okay, Islamic empire had spread to such an extent that it created a lot of problems because Islamic empire has extended and it has spread in the areas which were earlier ruled by Persians and some of the areas that were ruled by the Byzantines. So this expansion, I will explain all these charges in detail. Just wait for a while. ठीक है, अभी मैं सारे एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ. तो वन ऑफ द रीजन मैंने बताया कि हम कह सकते हैं that the Islamic empire was too much far and too much vast. So this was one of the reason that it was a problem that it was difficult to take quick administrative communication because the provinces were far away from another. So that is why it stretched from Morocco to Kabul. So this caused and this resulted in so many administrative uh, problems, okay, misunderstandings, and it resulted in the revolts. Fine. So this is one of the reason. And I told you that Jews, Persians, they were not happy with the growing power of the Muslims. Okay, since they had realized that Islamic empire is too and it is too great and it is too powerful, and they cannot defeat the Muslims by fighting, okay, and by war. So they had realized that Muslims could be damaged and they could be destroyed by creating a rivalry between them. उनके दरमियान आपस में इख्तलाफात और आपस की जो है उनकी rivalry और उनकी इख्तलाफात को उभारा जाए. So this is how they started planning these elements. They spread inside the Islamic empire. Okay, and one particular person I told you that was Abdullah bin Sabah. Fine. So identify these things in your answer. So these people, they started spreading false accusation against Usman radiallahu anhu. See, these were the baseless allegations against Usman radiallahu anhu which he has faced. Usman radiallahu anhu, since he was very much kind and he was very much lenient, he did not take any firm action against such type of activity which was spreading day by day in the Islamic empire. I told you about the Abdullah bin Sabah. He was a Jew. He was a conspirator against Usman radiallahu anhu, and he was the one who had spread the feelings of discontent and disaffection in the various provinces successfully. Discontentment has been spread by him. Okay, so he was the one who had created such an opposition against Usman radiallahu anhu. Okay, so because of these reasons, anti-government elements, they started rising. Okay, let me explain first of all these charges which I had identified that Usman radiallahu anhu faced these four major charges. Okay, these charges are of nepotism, weak control over the governors, spending lavishly from Baitul Mal, burning of the Quran. These were the major charges which Usman radiallahu anhu faced during his rule. So again, coming to the causes we had discussed that revolt. Why there was a revolt? Because of his lenient nature, because Jews, Persians, the Byzantines, they were ready to take revenge, and a movement which was started by Abdullah bin Sabah. Okay, so the first allegation against Usman was of nepotism. What is nepotism? That he had appointed his inefficient relatives as governors. Okay, his inefficient relatives as governors. You have to describe that to what extent this allegation was right or wrong. Okay, how you will describe? Yes, so I will explain the burning of the Quran also. So why this allegation was incorrect? Because if we look into this charge in detail, we can find out that altogether there were 12 provinces in the Islamic Empire at that time. Out of these 12 provinces, Osman had his relatives only in the 4 provinces. This was not a great ratio. 4 out of 12, it was not a great ratio. It is just a simple. Only just on 4 provinces he had his relatives. Okay, namely Egypt, Syria, Kufa, and Basra. Okay, why he had appointed and why he had his relatives on these provinces? Because of the reason, because these provinces were of great importance. These provinces, because of the importance of these provinces, Usman Anhu had to appoint his relatives on these areas. And out of these provinces, you must know, okay, I told you that 12 provinces. Out of these 12 provinces, he had his relatives on 4. Okay, Egypt, Syria, and Kufa and Basra. Egypt and Syria, he had his relatives in these two provinces, but they were not appointed by Usman. They were actually appointed by Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu anhu. Usman has not appointed these people as a governor. Okay, they people have been appointed by Umar, and Usman let them continue their job, continue their office. So on Syria, there was Hazrat Muawiyah Radhiyallahu anhu. He was a relative of Usman Radhiyallahu anhu, and he has been appointed by Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu anhu. So who was on Syria? You must know his name. That was Hazrat Muawiyah, a companion of the Holy Prophet. And who has appointed? Hazrat Umar has appointed him as a governor of Syria, and Usman let him continue his office since he was an able governor and he was an able administrator. And he was also one of the scribe of the divine revelation. So Hazrat Muawiyah Radhiyallahu anhu has been appointed by Umar Radhiyallahu anhu, and Usman let him continue his office. So this was the first case. The second case was Egypt, and in Egypt there was Abdullah bin Saad. Abdullah bin Saad was the foster brother of Usman Radhiyallahu anhu, and he too has been appointed by Hazrat Umar. Okay, he too has been appointed by Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu anhu and not by Usman. Although he was the foster brother, but he has been appointed by Hazrat Umar, and he was the governor of Egypt, and he was also successful. He was an able governor. Okay, he was an efficient governor. Why? Because whole of the North Africa has been conquered during his rule. Okay, he crushed the rebellions there, he crushed the revolt, and the whole of the North Africa has also been conquered during his rule. The third, the next two provinces, Kufa and Basra, Usman actually had appointed his relatives and he had removed the earlier one. Usman had appointed Walid bin Uqba, okay, and he had removed Saad bin Abi Waqas. Saad bin Abi Waqas was the governor earlier. Usman removed Saad bin Abi Waqas. Why? Because he was unable to control the situation in the province. There was a revolt. There was a revolt after the death of Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu anhu. People in Kufa, they revolted. There was a revolt in Armenia and Azerbaijan, in these two areas. Okay, after the death of Hazrat Umar, there was a revolt in Kufa, in these two particular places, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Usman Radhiyallahu anhu changed the governor. He appointed Walid bin Uqba, and Walid bin Uqba was his stepbrother, half brother or stepbrother. So he was being appointed as a governor of Kufa, and he led successful campaigns there, and he crushed the revolt, and he served the people of Kufa to the best of his abilities. ठीक है, तो इस वजह से इनको चेंज किया. साद बिन अबी वकास को हटा के उनकी जगह वलीद बिन उकबा को अपॉइंट किया, जो कि उनके स्टेप ब्रदर हैं, हाफ ब्रदर हैं. ठीक है, और वजह क्या थी? वजह ये थी कि साद बिन अबी वकास जो थे वहाँ कूफा के हालात और उनकी कंडीशन और सिचुएशन को कंट्रोल नहीं कर सक रहे थे. दैट इज़ वाई साद हैज़ बीन रिमूव्ड and Walid bin Uqba has been appointed as the governor of Kufa. Then the fourth province was Basra. Usman appointed Abdullah bin Amir and he removed Abu Musa Ashari. Okay, he deposed Abu Musa Ashari. Abu Musa Ashari ko hata ke. Why? Because people themselves demanded that they wanted to remove Hazrat Abu Musa Ashari, and in his place Usman has nominated his cousin Abdullah bin Amir as the governor of Basra, and he reconquered the whole of Faras, Sistan, Khorasan, because there was a revolt later on after the death of Hazrat Umar in these areas, and Abdullah bin Amir reconquered these areas. Okay, the whole of these areas were conquered, which were earlier conquered during the last years of Umar's Khilafat. So we had seen that what was that charge, and here you have to describe it in that much detail. इसी तरीके से आपको इतनी ही डिटेल के अंदर डिस्क्राइब करना है, ठीक है, कि एलिगेशन था क्या, नेपोटिज्म क्या था, और उस नेपोटिज्म को डिस्क्राइब करना है। देवर एफिशिएंट, देवर, ठीक है, वो जो एलिगेशन था कि देवर इनएफिशिएंट, तो दिस वाज रॉन्ग, all were efficient since they proved themselves, and that is why they were allowed to continue their office. So they all were competent, they all were efficient, and we can further add that there was no such law that Khalifa cannot appoint relatives as governors. Since there was no such bar and there was no such restriction on the caliph that he cannot appoint relative as governor. So there was no restriction on the caliph, and he can nominate anyone from his relative as governors. And since they were capable and they were of great caliber, that is why they have been appointed. Another reason आप ये कह सकते हैं कि since these provinces were of great importance, जो हमने पहले बात की थी ना, these provinces were of great importance. Okay, these were the main key provinces. That is why Usman radhiyallahu anhu wanted to have someone on whom he can trust, and he can have full confidence over him. So since these provinces are of great importance, इनकी बहुत अहमियत थी, ये बहुत अहम और key provinces थे. That is why Usman radhiyallahu anhu decided to have someone on whom he can trust, जिनके ऊपर भरोसा किया जा सके. And there was no such legal bar and restriction on the caliph that he cannot appoint his relatives as a governor. There was no such restriction. That is why, ठीक है, तो मैं again I am repeating कि Usman had appointed his relatives as governors, and these were all competent, they were of great caliber, they were efficient. Okay, सब के सब बहुत ज़बरदस्त थे, सब के सब बहुत काबिल थे, और सब के सब बहुत ग्रेट, उसमें अच्छे कैलिबर के थे. उन सबको इसलिए अपॉइंट किया गया. एंड दे प्रूव देमसेल्फ कैपेबल, ठीक है, बाय क्रशिंग द रिवॉल्ट, बाय एडिंग न्यू एरियाज टू द इस्लामिक एम्पायर, ठीक है, बाय रिकॉन्करिंग द एरियाज दैट हैज बीन लॉस्ट आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ हजरत उमर रजी अल्लाह तआला अन्हु. फाइन. एंड इसलिए भी Usman had appointed his relatives because there was no such restriction, there was no such bar or restriction on the caliph कि he cannot nominate or appoint his relatives as governors. खलीफा के ऊपर किसी किस्म की कोई पाबंदी नहीं थी कि वो अपने relatives को अपॉइंट नहीं कर सकता, ठीक है. एक तो ये बात, तो इसलिए relatives का अपॉइंट करना कोई, that was not against the law. Second thing is that कि since these provinces were of great importance, ठीक है, इनकी अहमियत और इनकी इम्पोर्टेंस बहुत ज़्यादा थी, ठीक है, तो इस वजह से इसके ऊपर अपने क्लोज रिलेटिव्स को अपॉइंट करना ज़रूरी था. Yes, these allegations were wrong. These were the charges against him. जो इनके ऊपर इल्ज़ामात लगाए गए हैं ना, हम तो ये कह रहे हैं कि ये these were the false allegations against him. So they were not true. Fine. ठीक है, जब कोई इंसान के ऊपर इल्ज़ाम लगने होते हैं तो वो अच्छा काम भी करता है तो वो उसको रॉन्ग, लोग उसको इन अ रॉन्ग वे उसको, ठीक है, अब देखने का अंदाज डिफरेंट होता है. एक काम है तो अच्छा, लेकिन उसको एक शख्स नेगेटिव वे में देखेगा तो उसके अंदर उसको गलतियां नजर आएंगी. People, they were against Usman, so they were portraying his good actions in a way that apparently it looks that he was going wrong and he was doing something wrong, कि जिससे लोगों को ये लगे कि ये देखो ये तो उन्होंने बहुत गलत काम किया. ठीक है, तो देखने का अंदाज डिफरेंट होता है. एक उसको पॉजिटिव वे में देखते हैं, एक उसको नेगेटिव वे में देखेगा. तो जिसको नेगेटिविटी में देखनी है तो उसके अंदर उसको अच्छे काम में भी नेगेटिविटी नजर आएगी, ठीक है. और एक इंसान हो सकता है उसको पॉजिटिव वे में देखे तो उसको अच्छे किसी नॉर्मल काम के अंदर भी वो पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट निकाल सकते हैं. तो उन्होंने हज़रत उस्मान रज़ी अल्लाह तआला अन्हु ने जो अच्छे अच्छे काम किए थे, ठीक है, दे वर ऑफ ग्रेट, ठीक है, वैल्यू फॉर इस्लाम एंड द मुस्लिम्स, बट दे स्टार्टेड saying such type of things about Usman रज़ी अल्लाह तआला अन्हु because they wanted to create chaos amongst the Muslims. They wanted, रीज़न क्या थी, रीज़न यही थी because they were not happy with the success of the Muslims. वो चाहते थे मुसलमान आपस में लड़ें, ठीक है, उनके आपस में डिफरेंसेस डेवलप हों. This is the reason that why they started such type of activities against the Muslims and Islam. So second allegation against Usman अगर हम देखें तो व्हाट वाज द सेकंड एलिगेशन, दैट ही डिड नॉट एक्सरसाइज कंट्रोल ऑन हिज गवर्नर्स। ठीक है, जो हमने पहले बात मेंशन की थी, वीक कंट्रोल ओवर द गवर्नर्स की बात हमने की थी ना, दैट ही हैड द वीक कंट्रोल ओवर द गवर्नर्स। सो व्हाट इज दैट, उन्होंने क्या इल्ज़ाम लगाया, कैलिफ उस्मान वाज वीक, ठीक है, बहुत वीक है, एंड डिड नॉट एक्सरसाइज कंट्रोल ऑन हिज गवर्नर्स। वजह क्या थी इसकी, द रीजन बिहाइंड वाज दैट सिंस बिकॉज उमर रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु वाज वेरी मच स्ट्रिक्ट बिफोर उस्मान, द कैलिफ वाज उमर, and Umar radiallahu anhu had imposed several restrictions on the governors. ठीक है, जब आप उनकी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन पढ़ेंगे हजरत उमर की, तो यू विल सी एंड यू विल फाइंड दैट उमर रज़ियल्लाहु anhu had laid down too much restrictions on the governor, that the governors they have to live very simple life, okay, and very simple clothes, ठीक है, simple dress, सादा लिबास, सादा खाना पीना, सादा सवारी, everything should be very much simple, just like an ordinary person, and governors were not allowed to take any action without his approval. Fine. So these were the restrictions which Umar Radiallahu anhu has laid down on these governors. Usman Radiallahu anhu did not consider these restrictions necessary. So what he did? He allowed and he gave them liberty and freedom. Okay, so he removed these restrictions from the governors. Fine. Because of this, it was also one of the reason that people they considered and they thought that Usman is not taking any action and the governors are free and they are doing whatever they want to do. ठीक है, तो रीज़न ये है कि उस्मान रज़ी अल्लाह तआला अन्हु was ruling over such a large empire, okay, and it was very much difficult for him to interfere in their day-to-day affairs, and even it would be very much difficult for the governor to wait for his permission to take any important decision. ठीक है, तो उनके लिए मसला है कि इतना, ठीक है, there are provinces which are far away from one another and it will definitely take time to get approval. That is why they have been allowed that they can take decision without taking approval from Usman. ठीक है, since Usman has appointed them and he had full confidence over them, उनको उनको उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु अन्हु को अपने गवर्नर्स के ऊपर पूरा एतमाद और भरोसा था। ठीक है, तो इसी वजह से उन्होंने उनको फ्रीडम, लिबर्टी और अथॉरिटी दी हुई थी, that he has given them authority and freedom that they can take action. And ऐसा नहीं कि उस्मान was very weak. We have the evidences and proof that Usman radiallahu anhu took action against people, against governors who were not performing their duty and job properly. So such people have been punished and their action has been taken against those people, those governors. So Usman was also very much strict and he took action against those who were not performing their duties well. So this was again an allegation. Okay, Usman has given some relaxation and liberty and freedom from such type of restrictions. उन restrictions से उन्होंने उनको freedom दे दी कि which he considered that they are not necessary. Fine. Third allegation against Usman was that he had spent lavishly from Baitul Mal. Okay, particularly on his relatives. This was again an allegation against Usman, that we know that Usman Radiallahu anhu was very rich and he was also very much generous. If you look into the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace upon him, Usman was a very rich person and very generous. He had spent his wealth for the welfare of the people. Okay, we know that Usman had purchased a well for the people of Medina in 20,000 dirham. We also know that Usman donated generously in Tabuk expedition. That Prophet was that much pleased with Usman कि Prophet ने कहा था कि nothing will harm Usman whatever he does afterwards. So Usman was very rich and whatever he had spent it from his personal property, personal income. Okay, and whatever he had spent on his relatives, even on his relatives, if not from his personal income, and if we had spent it from Baitul Mal, so Baitul Mal is actually a public treasury and Baitul Mal is for those people who are deserving and needy. Since Baitul Mal is for the public welfare, so whatever wealth is there in Baitul Mal, it is for the betterment and for the good and prosperity of the deserving people. So whatever Usman had spent, he had spent it on the poor people, deserving and the needy people. So this was not true to allege such an allegation against him that he had spent on his relatives. So those people who were needy, those who needed financial support or any type of support, the people have been helped since Baitul Mal. The purpose of Baitul Mal is to help the poor and the needy. Lavishly कहते हैं बहुत ज़्यादा बेदरीग तरीके से खर्च करना, बेतहाशा खर्च करने को कहते हैं, ठीक है, तो that is called lavishly. So these were the three main, and the fourth one is the last one that we can identify. It is the burning of the Quran. Okay, you have to particularly identify these four in detail. That Usman, the most serious charge against him was the burning of Quran. Okay, उनके खिलाफ ये भी था कि उन्होंने कुरान करीम को जलाया. Why he did so? Since there was no standard copy of the Holy Quran, and it has been reported by Huzaifa to Usman anhu that people, they are reciting Quran in different accent and different dialect. Okay, there are different recitations amongst the Muslims, and they are reciting it in different way. So what he did, he discussed the matter in the council. अपनी मर्जी से नहीं किया था, शूरा से मशवरा किया, मीटिंग कॉल की, मीटिंग कॉल करने के बाद he discussed the matter in the council, और उसके बाद फिर ये हुआ कि when all agreed that there should be an official copy of the Holy Quran on the accent of Quraysh, then he made a panel of 4 people, Zaid bin Sabit along with 4 other people from Quraysh. They were the senior companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and standard copy on the accent of Quraysh was compiled. Standardization has been done by him. And when the Caliph did this task, when he completed it, people admired him. He received great admiration from the people that Caliph has done such a great work, and he has saved the Muslim Ummah from the conflict and the disagreement with one another. So initially, his work has been praised by the people. People praised him and admired him for such a wonderful job. But later on, these rebels, these mischief makers, they raised a hue and cry. उनके खिलाफ अल्जाम और आवाज़ें उठाना शुरू कर दी that the Caliph had burned some of the authentic volumes of the Holy Quran. Why these copies have been burnt? The reason behind was that so that it will not create any confusion later on. Okay, because if these copies were not destroyed earlier, it would have created a lot of confusion, and these fake copies would be circulated amongst the Muslims, which would result in so much confusion and differences amongst the Muslims. So this is one of the greatest work that has been done by Usman anhu, that he had gathered the whole Ummah on one reading of the Holy Quran. So this was such a great work, and it was not his personal decision. This has been done after taking Shura into confidence, and this was the advice. This actually has been suggested by Shura, the advisory council. Okay. Okay. Next we have to discuss that revolt against him. So these were the particular allegations against Usman, since the people wanted to change Usman. They wanted to remove him from the post of Khilafah. They wanted to create rivalry amongst the Muslims. So these are the basic. So we have seen that Islam has encountered many problems and difficulties. The charges of nepotism, appointing of his family members at the key positions, spending lavishly from Baitul Mal, it earned him a great enmity. The second reason उनके खिलाफ क्या हुआ था? During the process of standardization of the Quran, he had asked for all the copies to be burnt, collected and burnt, for saving the book of Allah. Okay, so it resulted and created rebellion in the entire state. People, they raised cry against him that he has burnt some of the authentic volumes of the Quran. Third reason कि उसमें उनके खिलाफ इतना ज़्यादा क्यों हुआ? His gentle disposition, उनकी सादगी, उनकी kindness, simple character was another reason for discourse. As he did not continue with the strict check and balance which Hazrat Umar was persistent about, so Hazrat Umar was very strict. And then how the revolt started against him, and which resulted in assassination of Usman. So finally what happened actually, the people, Egyptians, they actually plotted against him. Since In Egypt, there were so many Jews. These people, these mischief makers, these Sabites, the followers of Abdullah bin Saba and his supporters, they found a firm ground in Egypt because there were settled so many Jews in Egypt after their defeat. So these Egyptians, they plotted. Okay, so they plotted against Usman Radiallahu Ta'ala anhu. What they did, all these people from different provinces, particularly from Kufa, Basra, and Egypt. Okay, they all gathered. They all made a plan against Usman Radiallahu Ta'ala anhu to change him, to remove him from the post of Khilafat, and he must be deposed. They all marched towards Medina. बज़ाहिर उन्होंने शो ये किया, apparently they showed that they are going for the performance of Hajj. ठीक है, हज के लिए जा रहे हैं. That was near the month of Zil Hajj. So they all marched towards Medina, showing that they had the intentions to perform Hajj. And upon arriving there in Medina, they set up their camps outside Medina. And they uh, shared their grievances against Usman and his policies. ठीक है, उन्होंने ये सारी चीज़ें वहाँ पे शो की. सो द सीनियर कंपेनियंस जो शूरा के, देवर द शूरा, ठीक है, जो शूरा काउंसिल के जो 3 मेन मेंबर्स थे, देवर देयर एट द टाइम. ठीक है, अमंग्स देम वाज तलहा, जुबैर एंड अली रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु. ओके, द मेन मेंबर्स ऑफ शूरा वर अली, तलहा एंड जुबैर रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु वर देयर. सो दे पीपल डिसाइडेड टू, ठीक है, तो उन्होंने सोचा कि हम हज़रत उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु से बातचीत करें और इनके बातें सुनकर वट एवर दे पीपल दे हैव टू से, वी मस्ट लिसन टू देम एंड वी शुड ट्राई टू नेगोशिएट. ठीक है, तो दीज पीपल प्रोटेस्टर्स फुलफिल देयर प्लान्स विद एडमायरेबल स्पीड एंड एफिशिएंसी. 3 कॉलम्स, 3 ग्रुप्स बन गए. कहाँ से आए? मैं टोल्ड यू दैट दे केम फ्रॉम कूफा, बसरा एंड इजिप्ट. 3 कॉलम्स. ठीक है, apparently on their way to Makkah Mukarrama for the pilgrimage left the garrison towns. These were the garrison towns. कौन कौन से garrison towns हैं? कूफा है, ठीक है, बसरा है, और बसरा के साथ साथ इजिप्ट के अंदर एक जगह थी जिसका नाम है फुस्तात. ठीक है, सो फ्रॉम कूफा, बसरा एंड इजिप्ट, ठीक है, दे दीज garrison towns होती हैं जहाँ फौज होती है. Once they reached Medina, they made separate bases, okay, in their accustomed camping grounds on the dry river beds that surrounded the oasis. There was no violence, ठीक है, कोई, but the arrival of the armed men shocked the population. सब परेशान हो गए कि why they had arrived. These rebels, they sent a deputations to the 3 most respected members of the inner council of the companions, जिसमें हजरत अली हैं, तलहा हैं एंड जुबैर हैं. ठीक है, अब्दुर्रहमान बिन औफ भी थे इसके मेंबर, बट उनकी डेथ हो चुकी थी, so he was no longer alive. So the companions rebuked the rebels, Danta, why you had come and why you had come armed. ठीक है, and they did not want to talk to them and they did not want to listen their complaints. But finally हज़रत अली रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु agreed, क्योंकि जब डेडलॉक इंटेंसिफाई हो गया तो हज़रत अली agreed to act as an intermediary, ताकि वो बातचीत कर सकें और चीज़ों को सॉर्ट आउट कर सकें. So people who came from Egypt, they demanded that they will go only if the caliph will accept कि वो अब्दुल्ला बिन साद को हटा के मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर को अपॉइंट कर दें. So what they demanded from him? They demanded from Hazrat Usman रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु कि that the caliph Egyptians plotted against him. What they demanded? They demanded from him to change the governor. What he should do कि मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर को अपॉइंट किया जाए और अब्दुल्ला बिन साद को हटा दिया जाए. To remove Abdullah bin Saad, okay, the governor, the relative of Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and in place of Abdullah bin Saad, he must appoint Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, son of Abu Bakr. Although the demand was not just and it was not justified, but Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu accepted their demand. Okay, he passed the letter, official letter, with his official stamp that he has passed this official letter that Abdullah bin Saad has been removed and Muhammad bin Abu Bakr has been appointed as a new governor. Okay, but at the time when they reached back to Egypt, when these people they reached back to Egypt में मैंने बताया कि फुस्तात is a major place जो कि उनका garrison town है. The rebel column from Egypt was overtaken by an African slave. They met an African slave with another letter. एक अफ्रीकन स्लेव उनको मिला जिसके हाथ में लेटर था. और उस लेटर में ये लिखा हुआ था, ठीक है, कि मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर को और इन सपोर्टर्स को क्या कर दिया जाए, टू बी किल्ड अपॉन देयर अराइवल। ठीक है, तो व्हाट हैज़ बीन रिटन इन द लेटर वाज ओपन, और उसमें लिखा ये था कि अब्दुल्ला, यहाँ पे अब्दुल्ला लिखा है, लेकिन ज़्यादातर अच्छी जो सही बात है उसके अंदर है मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर का नाम आता है, कि अब्दुल्ला या मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर टू अरेस्ट द रिंग लीडर्स एंड पुट देम टू डेथ ऑन देयर रिटर्न। ठीक है, तो लेटर ये मिला कि इसमें यह लिखा हुआ है कि हज़रत उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु की तरफ से कि जब ये लोग इजिप्ट पहुंचे तो क्या किया जाए, मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर को उनके सपोर्टर्स के साथ क्या कर दें, कत्ल कर दिया जाए, एंड अब्दुल्ला बिन साद टू रिमेन ऑन हिज पोस्ट। So what they found a letter, which was actually a fake letter that has been made by these people actually. ठीक है, तो these Egyptians, they plotted against him. They intercepted an order of the Caliph to the governor of Egypt to kill Muhammad bin Abu Bakr and his companions on their arrival. ठीक है, तो एक फेक लेटर उन्होंने खुद ही बना के हज़रत उस्मान के खिलाफ एक प्लानिंग की, और ये प्लानिंग ये की कि हज़रत उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु को इसके तरह से एक और उनके ऊपर इल्ज़ाम लग सके। ठीक है, तो दिस इज हाउ दे प्लॉटेड अगेंस्ट उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु। दे रिटर्न विद द लेटर। ठीक है, वो इस लेटर के साथ वापस आए और हज़रत उस्मान से कहा कि वी हैव फाउंड दिस लेटर फ्रॉम यू एंड अकॉर्डिंग टू दिस लेटर यू हैव कमांडेड अब्दुल्ला बिन साद टू रिमेन ऑन हिज पोस्ट एंड मोहम्मद बिन अबू बकर टू बी किल्ड। उस्मान swore that he has not passed any such letter. कसम खाई, ओथ लिया, that he had not passed any such order. But these rebels, these mischief makers, they stuck to one point. Their demand was just one, and what they wanted, they besieged him in his house, and they insisted that he must be deposed. So when on their instance he was not abdicated, they ensured to cut down food and water supply during this time. What they did? They cut the water supplies. They besieged Usman in his house. They even did not allow to come out of his house even for the performance of prayer. So the siege, which lasted for 50 days, okay, during that Muslim senior companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they sent their children, they sent their sons to protect Usman. Like Hazrat Ali sent both of his sons Hassan and Hussein to protect Usman. Okay, Zubair sent his son Abdullah to protect Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu. They even asked Usman radiallahu ta'ala anhu to use army, to state army. ठीक है, रियासत की जो फौज है उनको यूटिलाइज करें, ठीक है, और उनके ज़रिए से क्या करें, उनके खिलाफ एक्शन लें, ठीक है, उनको क्रश करें. बट उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु रिफ्यूज टू यूज़ आर्मी. ओके, ही रिफ्यूज टू यूज़ आर्मी जस्ट फॉर द सेक ऑफ हिज खिलाफत. So Usman रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु refused to take any help from any army. ठीक है, what these people they demanded, they had actually demanded to take खिलाफत फ्रॉम हज़रत उस्मान. उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु ने कहा कि नहीं, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता. वाई? उस्मान रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हु ने कहा कि he could not take off a dress in which Allah had dressed him. ड्रेस से मुराद यहाँ खिलाफत का लिबास है. उन्होंने कहा कि he cannot take off a dress in which Allah had dressed him. मैं उस लिबास को, उस लुबादे को, उस गाउन को नहीं उतार सकता जिसको अल्लाह ताला ने मुझे पहनाया है. ठीक है, लोगों ने कहा कि आप क्या करें, आर्मी को यूज़ करें, बट उन्होंने मना कर दिया. सो हज़रत अली, हज़रत ज़ुबैर, हज़रत तलहा सेंट देयर ओन सन्स टू गार्ड हज़रत Usman's door from any direct attack. The time for a satisfactory compromise was swiftly passing. ठीक है, जब रेबल्स को पता चला कि हज़रत मुआविया had sent a force from Syria, the Syrian forces are about just 120 kilometers from Medina, so they decided to act. And what they did? They entered into the house of Usman. Okay, the house of Usman was surrounded. ठीक है, the companions of the Holy Prophet, जो close companions थे, उन्होंने हज़रत उस्मान से request की. They pleaded Usman that he allow them to defend him. So Usman repeatedly refused, कहा कि नहीं. And what he ordered? He ordered them to go back to avoid any further bloodshed. So the sons of several companions, including Hazrat Hassan, Hazrat Hussein रज़ियल्लाहु तआला अन्हुम, Hazrat Zubair के बेटे Ibn Zubair, Abdullah bin Zubair, they pleaded one last time with Usman to allow them to fight in his defense, but Usman strictly refused and ensured that they all returned to their homes, knowing that he was the sole target and that his martyrdom has been predicted by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him himself. So since his martyrdom has been predicted to him by the Holy Prophet, peace upon him himself, so he was aware that he would be killed. What he wanted that just because of him there should be no bloodshed. Because those who were demanding to remove him from the post of Khilafat, they were also claiming that they are Muslims. तो आपस में मुसलमानों का मुसलमानों के साथ bloodshed होगा. It will result in the civil war, and once this civil war started, it will not come to an end, because he was aware, and it was been also predicted by the Holy Prophet that once the civil war has been started, it will not end. Usman did not want to be the reason of this civil war. वो नहीं चाहते थे कि उनकी वजह से ये आपस के इख्तलाफात और आपस की जंग हो. ठीक है, तो ये बात आप बता देंगे आंसर में. ठीक है, he sent them back. As a result, there was lapse in the security, and when Muslims they were performing their Friday prayer, then the Friday call has been azan has been called. He was alone in his room with his wife Hazrat Naila. He was reading the Quran. So as the sword pierced the caliph's forehead, जैसे ही attack हुआ उनके ऊपर, the first drops of his blood fell on the verse of the Holy Quran. Okay, that was the verses of Surah Baqarah. Okay, you can mention and quote this verse that but Allah will suffice you. Okay, but Allah will suffice you. Suffice you means Allah will be sufficient for you against them, and He is all hearing and all knowing. So the blood drops fell on these verses. His wife Naila, Usman's wife Naila, tried to protect Usman, but her two fingers chopped off. They were cut, and his wife Naila was also wounded while trying to protect Usman. In this process, she lost two of her fingers, and Usman was indeed dead. But along with his death, the unity of the Muslim Ummah was also dead. Okay, it has been lost. So Usman has been assassinated on 18th Zilhaj 35 AH. Okay, identify 18th Zilhaj 35 AH. Usman Anhu has been assassinated by these mischief makers, by these rebels, and he was buried in Jannatul Baqi. So today we had discussed the major events of the Caliphate of Usman Anhu, particularly his martyrdom. So his blood drops fell on the verse, and verily Allah will suffice you against thee, and He is all knowing. When his wife Naila rushed to help for his help, she was pushed away and her fingers were chopped off. This tragic incident took place on Zilhaj 1835. The assassination of Usman was a signal of civil war, as it completely broke the unity between the Muslims, who then became as Banu Hashim and Banu Umayyah. So the unity has been shattered. It has been lost with that event. So whenever you have a question about, outline the charges and the revolt which happened at that time, so you have to write your answer in this way. इसी तरीके से आंसर को डेवलप करोगे और अपना आंसर को कंप्लीट करोगे.